how are you today? How's your day been? How's your week been? Of course, it's Friday, a lovely day of the week to finish on, and the weekend is here. And I do love the weekend, although fundamentally in my life, every day feels like Friday and every day feels like the weekend. Because, when you're making content, when you're doing something you really love in life, then no day is like Monday, and every day is fundamentally the same, but every day is a great day whilst you're doing what you're doing. And of course, it's about changing minds. It's about looking at the bigger picture in life. It's about changing the future and respecting our heritage and our history. And that's so important, to remember that history. And this is partly what the video on the live stream is about, is remembering who we are and where we came from. So let's have a look, see if any comments are popping up yet. Because if I don't click live, it won't show any. And we also have a look, see who's the top fans of this live stream. So I think that's mostly related when it comes to top fans to each live stream itself. As I readjust a good old T-shaped axe, and of course I showed a Dane axe in the video thumb title. And I am next to a good old Romano British sword. You always want one of them in your life. But if nobody fundamentally joins, then this live stream won't last for long. But I've had a fantastic day, as always. I've been down my local pub, mostly to take a birthday card to Daniel, one of our fans of the channel. In fact, I could say he's our #1 fan from Darley Abbey. And that's fantastic how we have such lovely people watching our videos locally as well. Because I've never really gone out to make local content. Although gradually, as I get more into local history, I'm bringing more and more on that to the channel. Whether it's the ghost stories, whether it's the medieval history of Derby, whether it's the history about, the murders and the crime of Derby, that is being brought to the channel gradually. And I am filming that behind the scenes, but yet I've not really published too much of it. And I'll tell you what, that's the best cup of tea I've had all day. Nearly. Maybe the second best cup of tea. Because I did go round my neighbours and they did make me a lovely cup of tea. I got 2 books recently. What is the walks and the climbs in the Pyrenees. And I must say, I've been to the Pyrenees and it's a lovely place. And whenever I get a book, I always write my name on it. Lovely part of the world. If you ever get a chance to go to the Pyrenees, I do recommend it. And I did see a comment, so let's just go to that comment and see who's said hello. So JR Chicago, greetings, and family historian of 30 years. Well, that's fantastic, because family history is so important. And certainly within my family history, my dad did some research and we found that we was related to the famous painter Joseph Wright of Derby, who's really famous in Derby. And I thought that's fantastic. And of course, we all have our family history. We all have those secrets in our families which we don't know about or we've heard rumours about. And I do love these programmes when they do family history and they look at the ancestors and who they came from. It's really fascinating. And in fact, recently I watched a family history program talking about Ricky Tomlinson and the fact that, his family came from really posh people, which really surprised him. And that was a really fascinating program. And he did it with, I think, with the woman he starred in the royal family. I can't remember her name, Sue somebody. But I do love those programs. And it demonstrates to us how much that family history has played a major part in who we are and where we come from. So, yes, if you ever get a chance to look at your family history, if you ever, have the money to spend a few pounds to have somebody look at your family history, you'll be amazed. And I know certainly the late and great Egil Thorson, our channel host, he looked very heavily into his family history. and he could date it back to the 6th century. And I thought that was amazing. His family were bishops, and there was high sheriffs and very major people in history, including the royal family. And he was always quite humbled by the fact that his ancestors were really famous people. And it's a shame that he's no longer here with us to talk about it with us. And, it's a shame we never recorded a video in depth talking about his family history. I'm not on the live streams, and I know that in the vlog series he did mention it a little bit. And that was fascinating. But just imagine you could date your family back 1400 years. That is really amazing. So JR of Chicago says, my dad's ancestry goes back to the 1400s. Magdeburg, Germany. But again, that's a fantastic part of the world, and the history in the different, states and countries that formed up Germany before Germany became what it is today. It's just fascinating. It really is. And, you look at the American Civil War, and you look at how many German people and men fought in that Civil War. In fact, there was whole entire regiments made out of German, immigrants, and that's also fascinating to me as well. And we should never forget that part of our history, because when we forget history, we forget who we are and where we come from. And it's so important that we remember our heritage, and it's so important that we actually learn from the past so we can produce and make a better future. Because if we don't do that, if we forget the past, if we forget where we come from, we risk making the same mistakes again and again and again. So we have a comment here from Brett Arnold. It says, greetings again, brother. Well, greetings, Brett. And how are you today, Brett? And how are you today, JR of Chicago? A place I've not been to so far in my life, but I'd love to go. Please let me know in the comments how you both are, because I really do care about all of you guys and girls, because, caring is such a wonderful gift to have. And it costs nothing to care. It costs nothing to show that honour we have as individuals and as free spirits. And if we all did that in life, we can make a better world. And I believe that, I really do. So, typically being English, I'm drinking a cup of tea. So Brett Arnold says, I'm good, brother. How are you doing today? Well, yes, I'm very good, actually. I've had a very good day. I've been out in my garden. I've mowed a bit of my lawn. I've edited tomorrow's video, which is the next episode in the Viking Club series, where I'm demonstrating I'm making a Viking club. Normally, I would have had it out today, but I got so sidetracked, I just completely forgot to edit it. So it's going to be out tomorrow. Then Sunday, I will think about a video for Sunday, long format. We've gone viral again on TikTok with a video gaining hundreds of thousands of views. And we've also been followed by a famous celebrity in Britain called Michael Barrymore. So what are the chances of that somebody really famous from the 90s is following us on TikTok? And I can certainly remember as a child watching the programmes Michael Barrymore was on, and it really was a fantastic period of history and of TV history. So yes, so hail to that individual for giving us a follow on TikTok. And I've been down to my local pub tonight, not really to have a beer, but mainly to drop off a birthday card to Daniel, who's 18. So congratulations, Daniel, turning 18. And he's a big fan of the channel. And his mum and dad are good friends of mine. So, and I think it's the first time ever on the channel I've ever actually written a birthday card for a fan and a subscriber. So, yes, but can you imagine being 18 in today's world? Oh, I wish I was 18 again. I really wish that. But, yeah, that must be amazing to be 18 in 2025. Because, of course, I'm nearly double his age and a little bit more. And I probably wouldn't change it to change the world, because I've been through a lovely period of history. And it's quite ironic today that Oasis, the infamous band from London, are or from Manchester are reuniting and doing their first gig in what is it, 10 years or is it 20 years? I forget now. But I've seen that band at least half a dozen times, if not more, over the years. In fact, I can remember the first time I saw Oasis play in Derby. It would be round about 1991 or 92 before Noel Gallagher joined the band, believe it or not. And there was literally a handful of people in the audience, no more than 20 to 30 people. And the venue was half empty because back in the day when I saw Oasis for the first time, they weren't known, they weren't famous. So Brett says, that's good to hear you're getting lots of followers. Yes, we are getting lots of traction on the channel and our videos are gradually taking off more and more and more. And let's face it, we've got 3,000 videos, we're about to have 3,000 videos published. And yes, it's taken a long time to get where we are now. And it always was with this sort of a channel that is dedicated to history, whether it's history of the past or today's history. But I always had a plan. I've always had a plan to take this channel, to a much larger audience and to reach those peoples. And yes, I do have a number of short video channels that have far more large audiences, which I don't really advertise on this channel because they're faceless, they're AI-led channels. But they're channels that don't fundamentally have me behind them and have me in the sense of my personality. So yes, but we are destined for great things. We will reach 100,000 subscribers. We will reach 1 million subscribers. We will go to places. We will travel. We will interview amazing people. And yes, we always try to keep that medieval concept of the channel and the stories and the history, but we will adapt. We will talk about the bigger picture. We will have our influence on the world and change the world and make it a better place, because that's the responsibility of somebody that's standing behind the camera. And I can't wait for the day when we do get to that stage where we're making so much money, then I can hire somebody to edit the videos. I can have a producer. I can have people behind the scenes helping the channel. And then when we get to that stage, it's just going to blow up massively. And of course, we're also very genuine. We're also very raw in our feel and our editing, because we're decent, honourable and respectable and genuine people. And a lot of channels, they desire that. They wish they had that. There's too many channels with ego. There's too many channels that just think about themselves. And that's not what YouTube should be about. And again, I was talking about this the other day, the fact that, we're always going to give the small guy a shout out. If you're a small YouTuber, if you want me to give you a shout out, then I will shout you out. I will share one of your videos or a few of your videos. And I will, maybe do a live stream with you, because that is about taking other people with us on this journey. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about us. And it's about taking the channel forward. So do you guys have any questions for me? Is there anything you'd like me to talk about? Because I'm more than happy to talk about anything, whether it's medieval history, whether it's, medieval swords like this one, which is very early in the period. This is a 6th century sword. And it's, I must say, it's a very nice blade. And it's not fundamentally sharp, even though it's got a sharp profile. And I must say, that's really nice. And I can't wait to have the excess money to buy more kit and to buy more helmets and invest in different impressions of history, so we can tell more tales, we can record more videos, and we could spread the channel to a much larger audience. But it does take time. They say it takes the average channel between 10 and 14 years to get established and become famous. Not that I want fame. I don't want fame fundamentally so. But I just want to make a difference. I know I'm very lucky in my life. I could, tomorrow pack up the channel and say to myself, right, that's it. I'm going to spend the next 52 weeks of the year going on a holiday and sunbathe by pools. But I don't choose to do that, because I choose to make that difference. I choose to make the world a better place. And I think that's a wonderful gift to have. So let me tell you a little story from tonight, because whenever I go out anywhere, whenever I interact with people, I always meet amazing and interesting individuals. So tonight I thought to myself, well, today I thought to myself, as I went down the pub late last night for a couple of pints, and it was lovely because it's escapism and it's also taking my mind away from making content, because I basically live and breathe content. You know, I'm always on the go. I'm always making a video. I'm always editing. I'm always working on SEO, if you know what that is. So I thought last night, I thought, oh, I'll go out. I wasn't planning to do a live stream, and I thought, oh, I'll go for a couple of pints. And it was very nice. I had a couple of pints of Samuel Smith's bitter, and I must say, the bitter is very tasty at the moment. It went down a treat, it really did. And I'm a big fan of Samuel Smith's bitter, because not only does it taste nice, it's a very cost-effective pint. You know, it's what, £3.30 for a pint of bitter, I think, and that's really good actually. And you know, so I thought I'd go out last night, had a really nice few pints, and I sat down with a landlord called Martin, a very good friend of mine, who I love very much, and we had a good old natter. And if you don't know what a natter is, it means a chat. Sorry, some days I'll go into local colloquialism and I'll talk and say words which are local to the area I come from. So I had a good old talk, and I got back home, made some fish finger sandwiches, I watched a bit of Star Trek, and gradually I fell asleep. And after having a good chat with ChatGPT, and because I do use AI every day in my life. And I got up this morning, I had a good old lie-in because I was very tired from the last week or so. And I thought, well, you know, I'll do a bit of tidying up. I went in the garden and mowed the lawn, or the first lawn. I got 2 lawns in my garden because I got sort of say massive big garden. It really is big. If you're a fan of the channel, you've probably seen the garden many times in our videos. So I did that, and I watered my plants and I watered my trees. I've got a lot of trees in the garden, a lot of them on pots. So I thought I'd do that. And then I thought, oh, and then last night, something a little bit weird happened. I was on the way back home, and I was walking down a road called Vicarage Road, which is on the road where the vicarage is, and I saw something brown in the road and thought to myself, what's that? Now, I'm a very curious person. If I see something that it sticks out as being a bit odd, I'd have a look. So I had a look and I picked it up, and it turned out to be somebody's wallet. And I was quite surprised. Well, what's a random wallet doing out here? And took it back home with me. Thought, what do I do? Well, you know me. I'm a very moral person, and if my dad was here with me right now, my late father Cyril, he would say, "Son, always do the right thing." So I had looked for the wallet. I tried to find an address, and I did find the address, and it quite luckily it wasn't too far away from my house, so I didn't have to drive anywhere. I didn't have to take it down to the police station, and I will continue this story about this, but in order to tell this story, I need to explain what I've been doing tonight. So when I went down to the my local pub last night called the Abbey Inn, and it's amazingly, the place goes back at least 800 years in history. That's amazing. It used to be part of an old monastery before Henry VIII came along and knocked it all down. Not him personally, but his men and his troops and his soldiers. They went around all over England and knocked down all these massive monasteries, which date back to the Anglo-Norman period of history. And it's a damn shame, because it would be lovely to have the monastery still here and to see the cathedral and the church and all the outbuildings. But no, they knocked it all down apart from one building. They left one building, and that's my local pub. So when I was down last night, my 2 friends told me, oh, it's Daniel's birthday, which is their son, who's a massive fan of the channel, and he's 18 this week. And like I said, I can't imagine being 18 in 2025. But of course, Daniel was 18, and you can imagine it very well. So I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to write him a birthday card. So I did that. I went down my little pub. I was only going to have one beer. I thought I'll go have a walk out, get some exercise, stretch my little legs, because it's about half a mile, to get there and half a mile back. So that's a good walk for me. And I thought, I'll go in. And I saw Daniel, gave him his birthday card. Hey, this is for you, mate. I had a lovely pint of bitter and sat on the little stool for a while next to the bar. That's such an old tradition. It makes you think, how old is the tradition of sitting, on a stool by a bar? And I think it's a very old thing in history. So I went in, and then I went and sat outside. And by chance, there's somebody I know from the pub called Andy. He has the same name as me. So, he's super great. If he got my name, you know he's going to be all right. So I sat down with him, and we was overlooking a guy on a electric bike who fell over. And, we were all talking, hey, he looks a bit drunk. And then he came over, and he was very drunk, but very merry and happy. I love drunk, happy people. I don't know why, but they're so humorous and they're so welcoming. So he came and sat down on a bench. He knew, and we knew, that he had too much to drink. So he wanted a pint of water. I don't think he got his pint of water. And he had this electric bike, like a mountain bike, but it was electric. And he was that drunk at one point, he tried to give it away to people. Do you want my bike, mate? Give me, you can have my bike. So he sat down with us. And that was, quite interesting. His name was Craig. And as always in life, I always look out for people. So I always make sure, are you all right, mate? Why don't you sit down for a little bit? Sober up. Because, that's what you do when you're a caring human being. And I wish more people were like me. So he sat down. Then another guy came out of the pub and sat down with us, and he was very friendly, and he bought me a pint of bitter. And his name was David, another interesting individual. And he looked like the comedian Jethro. He looked like this bitty image, apart from he didn't have his accent and he never told me any funny jokes. And if you don't know who Jethro is, just go to TikTok and type in Jethro, which is Jetho, and you'll see some very funny jokes told by Jethro, who's a man and a famous comedian who's not long passed away, from Dorset. And I tell you what, I've seen him live a couple of times and he's hilarious. But so I bought myself 2 pints. I was only having one, but as always, when you go to the pub, especially when I go to the pub, I always meet fascinating, interesting people. And I love that, I really do. So that's been my night. And I was planning to come back at 9 o'clock, but things didn't quite work out, and I got back at 10:15. Made a cup of tea, which I'm drinking at the moment, which is very nice. And then I thought I'll just do a little bit of a live stream to see how everybody is. So yeah, if anybody's got any comments, anybody wants to say anything, let me know. Oh. And I've stopped using sugar in my tea. I'm now using honey, because I'm trying to reduce the amount of sugar I have in my life. And I must say, tea with honey is very nice. And surprisingly, it's quite cheap. But I do worry about cheap honey, whether it's got any sugar in it or anything like additives or anything that shouldn't be in honey. But I must say, I do love a cup of tea. And I'm also having cups of tea now without honey and just on its own. And at first I thought to myself, I'll take a sip and I go, ooh, I don't like that. It's got no sugar in it. But I must say, I'm getting used to it, and I'm getting used to that taste. That's lovely. So tomorrow's long format video will be the next episode of me making the wooden club. I think that's episode 5. believe it or not. And I certainly got episode 6 recorded. But then next week, when I got a little bit of time, I got to record the next 3 episodes. So watch out for that. I'm gradually getting to the point with that video where I'm going to be on my wooden horse and using a draw knife. And I've already done a little bit in episode 3, I think, where I use my wooden horse. But I do need to replace the back legs. So perhaps one of these videos in the series will be me making 2 new legs and replacing the legs on the back, because one of them's broken and I could probably use it still, but there's a risk of it collapsing on me when I'm working on my wood horse. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, a wood horse is basically it's like a stool, and it's got a clamping system where you clamp your bit of wood and you use a draw knife, which is a knife with 2 handles, and then you could take off the meat of your material on your wooden handle. And it's a fantastic tool. And if you're into woodwork, you definitely need one in your life. So that's what I got planned tomorrow on Saturday. And then Sunday, I think I should be going out Sunday evening for a few beers with my neighbours and my 2 friends who run the local pub, the Abbey. So that'll be a nice evening out as well. And I must say, it's nice to get out and it's nice to have company. Because yes, I mean, I can some days stay in my house too long. I can hibernate. I can, not go out if I'm not careful. And if I'm not careful, it will be days and days and days before I have human contact. So it's nice to get out, and I'm trying to get out a little bit more. I'm trying to socialise, and I'm trying to get a bit more community in my life. So that's been very positive for me. And I wish I could do a live stream from my local pub, but unfortunately, mobile phones are banned from the pub I go to. You're not allowed to take your phone in the pub or use it, which is a shame. But on the other side of that aspect, it's quite nice not to have to use your phone, not to be on your phone all the time, or see dozens of people in the pub looking at a phone all the time. Because then what happens, people start communicating. And I'm very talkative. I'll literally talk to anybody, especially in a pub. And I always ask people how they are. So I've had lots of conversations tonight with random strangers asking, how are you? Are you having a good day? Because that's politeness, and it doesn't cost anything to ask people how they are. Then on the way back tonight, I managed to knock on the house where I found the owner of the wallet, and I returned the wallet to him, and the guy name was Steve was very thankful for it. And I love that, because if more people were like me and did the honest and decent thing in life, we'd have a better society. So yes, that's great. I love that completely, and I'm glad I got a solution to finding a random guy's wallet. And a lot of people would just throw it in the bin. A lot of people would just pick it up and throw it back down again. But not me, no. I always do the right thing, and I always strive to do the right thing, because that's the wonderful person I am. But I'm not perfect. I'm stubborn. And I don't always listen to people's advice. But, nobody's perfect. And that also is what makes the world what it is. So let's have a look. Let's see any more comments. So, yeah, please do leave some comments, because if not, I'm going to just talk on for hours and hours, and I'll probably just end the live stream and go and do something else. But one of the reasons why I like doing these live streams is so that I can read your comments, I can answer your questions, and we can interact with each other. Because I really do crave deep, meaningful conversations with people, even though at times in my life when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I can see them looking at me thinking, all right, you're having a deep conversation, but I'm a little bit confused and it's going over my head. I get that a lot, because I'm so in depth in what I know, my knowledge. Some people just can't cope with that, but that's fine. That's who I am. Oh, that awkward silence in a live stream. But at least it's not like last Friday when I did a live stream and I've had too many beers. So there's definitely a lesson to learn there. If you ever do a live stream, make sure you don't go out and have 7 pints of beer. and come back and do a live stream, or 5 pints of beer. So, I've had the right amount of beer, and it's a very old tradition in the UK going out having beer. Let's face it, we've been drinking since the Bronze Age, since the Neolithic times, since we stopped being nomads and we started growing crops, because one of the produce from crops is actually ale. And of course, we have mead and we have cider and perry and wine, of course. So we have a comment here from three. Silmarils. It's a cheers from Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, what a lovely part of the world. I don't think I've been to Arizona. No, I haven't. But I'd love to go there, look at the history, meet people, and have a few beers and some bars. That would be a fantastic experience. I've definitely been to quite a few states in America, but not Arizona. So, welcome to the channel. Welcome to Northworthy. See, at the moment, we've got another trending video going viral on the channel. And I've got no idea how many views it's got now. It's probably heading towards 100,000, I would have thought. But imagine if we're lucky, we'll get to 1 million. Oh, so we've got a comment here from Offer10. Hi, Braggy. How are you? No, I'm great, as always. I'm living the life. I just thought I'd come and do a late live stream for a little bit, see how everybody is, get a little bit of interaction, and of course it helps to build up to those 4,000 hours, so that again we can become monetized, which does help the channel to make money from the the advertising, because all the camera equipment and everything we got costs money. I mean, something like this is £200-300 if you want a good sword, and of course the more money we make, the more money I can put back in the channel. But there's always been a part of me that doesn't like that aspect of YouTube. But as a full-time content creator, you need to make a living. And yes, I make a living out of some of the other channels that I have, which will remain nameless for various reasons, because they're faceless. And when you have a faceless channel, you don't fundamentally want to tell people that you're behind it, and so forth. But yeah, I'm good. I've had a good day. I've had a good week. And then Salamaru says, and I hope you got your name right, I'm not so lovely right now with the heat, and no good ciders at our stores. Oh, that's a shame. And it's definitely been too hot in the UK over last weekend. It was unbearable in the 30s. But I'd imagine where you are in Arizona, that will be even more unbearable. So, I don't know how I wouldn't cope in Arizona. I'll be in a pool all day or sitting by my air conditioning. So, I get 30 degrees in the UK and I can't do nothing because it's too hot. It's okay when you're on holiday. If you're on Ibiza or the Tenerife, that's great. You want it to be 30 degrees. But when you're trying to go in the garden and do things and it's 30 degrees, it's just too hot. And, you go out for 5 minutes and you're sweating like a pig, an old saying. And, you're drinking so much water because you're dehydrated all the time. And you get a headache all the time. So I just can't bear too much heat. And so I can't imagine what it's like in Arizona. I really can't. If we're going to go, I think I'll travel in the winter time and it's cooler. So, Offer10, how are you, my friend? Let me know. Are you still in North Norway, or have you come back to the south of Norway after seeing your relatives? And again, another country I really want to go to and travel to. And who knows, I might even move there one day. I'm sure Norway would adopt me as being Norwegian because of what we do on the channel and how we love our Viking heritage. And lovely part of the world. Definitely want to go there in the future, and I definitely will come and see you in the future, Offer10, and I'll buy you a pint of beer. How about that, my friend? So he says, I'm back from the north. Oh, cool. I mean, that's like me going to North Scotland. And says, Offerton says, now I'm on the coast west of Trondheim. A very beautiful place. Yes, I've definitely seen pictures of Trondheim. And, well, no matter where you see pictures of Norway, it all looks spectacular and it all looks beautiful. It definitely reminds me of going to Scotland, which has very similar landscape to a certain degree. Yes. And of course, I like to go to Sweden as well, and definitely Finland, and maybe Estonia, some of those countries around there as well. And definitely Denmark. I'd like to go there as well. I've been to Germany a few times in my time. The beer's lovely and the women are nice. And then we have a comment here from Bear Devlin. Literally just found your channel. How I missed it before. I don't know how to keep up. Yes, I do apologise for some days. I can put out a lot of content, and because we got nearly 3,000 videos to watch, that's a lot of content to watch. But I do recommend a few of the videos. So that would be the videos where me and Eggle do stories together, because those are really, really funny. You'll see those videos where I'm narrating a story and Eggle is doing the funny voices. So I'm thinking about it now in my memory, and I'm dying of laughter. I'm trying to keep a straight face in those videos, and Eggle was like sitting beside me doing the little funny voices from the Goon Show, and which he really loved. And I'm just inside of me, I'm dying of laughter, and I'm trying to keep a straight face. So those videos are really, really good. I definitely recommend the vlog series if you want to escape into that. And I think at some point in the future, I'm going to re-edit those vlog series into a podcast, and then gradually, when I get towards the end, start publishing more vlogs and continue that series, because I think that series, the biking vlog series, really does need to carry on. And of course, we've talked about history. There's lots of weapons, about medieval weapons, about swords, about, Dane axes. So there's an awful lot of content. There's an awful lot of English folk tales, German folk tales, Scandinavian, Norwegian, Swedish, Danish folk tales, German folk tales. There's one or two Irish folk tales, and there's also the obscure one from America, Native Indian folk tales. We told one or two of them. There's one Japanese folk tale, which is a tale about a little tiny warrior who fought a giant. And I'm trying to remember the name of it. I could tell you the story. If you want me to tell you the story, I think it's Imboshi and the Giant. And I must say, I really do like Japanese folk tales, and definitely want to record more. And then, we've unpacked things, we've unwrapped things on camera. Unboxed is a proper phrase. We've done a lot of channel reviews and videos where we're watching video trailers from films. So yeah, there's an awful lot of content to look at, and I do love what we do. And thank you for subscribing, Bear, and a warm welcome to the channel. So he says, any chance for a story is always good. Whoa, yes. Well, let me tell you this Japanese folktale I know. And I think the little man is called, I'm trying to think of the correct name of him. It's something Boshi. I think it's, I wish I had another phone on me. I could look it up, or the book in front of me. So many years ago, in the land of Japan, in the old times, when you had samurais, when you had ninjas, and that's a fantastic part of history. there was a little tiny man, and we'll call him Imboshi, is his name. And he really was tiny because he was that small he could fit into a wooden cup. And he had a family, he had a mum and dad and brothers who were much larger than him. But he was no good in the sense of he couldn't work the land, he was too small. And he couldn't work in the house because he was too tiny. And so one day, his mother, who was a very old and wise woman, said, "Oh, Imboshi," said, "you must go to the big town many leagues away." And a league is a distance of travel, many miles. And said, "You must become a samurai warrior because you have the purest of hearts and you're so kind and so brave, even though you're very tiny." And it was that big, no more than an inch. He was a very small, tiny man. And so, his mum and dad persuaded him to go to the big town, and they got a little wooden cup which he could use as a boat. And his mother, the wise woman, gave him 2 grains of rice so he could use them as oars to row the little cup down the river. And his dad, his father, being a very wise man, gave him a little pin of metal. Now, for you and me, that pin would be tiny in our hands, but to him, Imboshi, it was like a sword, and that is what he used it as, a little tiny sword. And so he got to the day when it was time to set off. They set the little cup of wood in the little stream, and little Imboshi got in the cup. He had a little bag, he had some bread and cheese, traditional food, the medieval age. And he set off, rowing with the 2 grains of rice. In the first night, he came across a giant frog, and the frog was ginormous to him, but he managed to row and get away. And he found a little beach where he settled for the night, and he made a fire and slept by the fire, and he was safe and he was sound. And it took many nights to get to the city. He saw big fish, bigger fish that he's ever seen in his life. But again, he grew wise and he had wisdom to get away from them. And eventually, he came to a place where he landed the cup of wood, and he got out. And he had some walking to do to go and find this big town. And eventually he came to the top of a hill, and he climbed the hill and he looked down into a valley, and in the distance was a walled city, big stone walled city with literally thousands of houses inside the city and temples and all manner of places where you can go and get a drink, and also where the samurai lived and they trained. For that was his mission, to become a samurai, to become a brave soldier. And a few people said to him, "Well, that'll never happen, Imboshi. You're too tiny. You can't become a samurai." But he believed in himself. He believed that he could become a samurai and become a mighty, fierce warrior. And so eventually, he walked down the valley and he came to the edge of the city with the big stone walls. And he thought to himself, "Oh, I'm going to see loads of people outside." In the old times, in the medieval times, traders and market stalls were always outside of city gates, trading and selling their goods. But when he got to the gates, something strange was happening, for there was nobody there. He looked around. "Oh, where's all the people?" He got to the gates himself, thinking, "Well, there's bound to be some guards at the gate, guarding the gate." And again he looked up. And don't forget, he was only very tiny, an inch high, and there was no guards. Nobody at all was guarding the gates of the walled city, and the gates were wide open. And so he walked into the city, and he's thinking to himself, "Whoa, there could be people everywhere. A busy city full of thousands of houses. There'd be thousands of people. getting away with the daily chores, walking about the city, going to the local inn, doing the work and the jobs. Women trading and selling goods, and men as well, at the market stalls, sitting by the pubs, talking about life. But there was nobody there. He looked around. Where's all the people? He thought to himself. And no matter how far he looked with his eyesight, no matter where he went, he could not find anybody. Now he went down a big street, and at the end of this street was a big house, in the Japanese style. And he saw that the doors were open. So he thought, I'm going to go in this house, go and find somebody, ask somebody, because he was trying to find the way to the place where the samurai, trained. And he went in the house. And at first he didn't see anybody. He looked round, where's all the people again? But then in the back of the house, there was loads of people, and they were scouring, they was hiding. And he came up to a man who was crouched behind a chair, and he was hiding. And he tugged on his cloak, on his clothing. I said, hello, I'm in Boshi. I said, I've come to be a samurai, but where's all the people? Well, this old man, who little Imboshi found, said, whoa, have you not heard? And little Imboshi said, what do you mean not heard? I said, well, we've got a massive problem in this city, in this town. I said, well, what's that? Said little Imboshi. He said, well, there's a big, nasty, evil giant, and he comes every day, and he eats our cattle, and he drinks all our wine, and takes people and eats them. And little Imboshi said, whoa, where's this giant? I will sort him out. I'm not having no giant coming around here upsetting the people. And this old man, he was 100 times the size of Imboshi, he laughed. Ha ha! Ha ha! He said, you're not going to take on that giant. Look at you. You're no more than an inch high. But little Imboshi, well, he was courageous. He had courage. And he was strong in spirit and in body for his size. And so he went out of the gate again to look for this giant. And at first, he couldn't find the giant. But then, in the distance, he heard a loud noise. Thump, thump, thump. And you know what that was, don't you? It was the footprints. It was the footsteps of the giant heading to the old town to drink the mead, to drink the wine, and to eat all the cattle. Again, because if the people didn't provide him with wine and food, he will destroy the town. So you had them to ransom, and the town people, the folk of the town, could not win. So little Imboshi, he stood there in front of the gate, and the giant got closer and got bigger and bigger, 1,000 times the size of little Imboshi. And that is his true name, Imboshi. And the giant got to the edge of the town, to the gates. And little Imboshi shouted up and said, oi, you! And the giant, having good hearing, heard a voice. Oh, where's that voice coming from? This is unusual. Most time I come to this town, the people hide and they don't say nothing. And he looked down to the floor and he saw the little tiny warrior, the little tiny man in Boshi. And he laughed. Ha ha ha! What are you going to do? Nothing. Well, the giant did not expect Imboshi to have the soul and the spirit of a true warrior. Little Imboshi, the tiniest man ever in Japan, jumped on the giant's foot and started to stab him with his little needle, his little sword, and climbed up his leg by grasping on the hairs of the giant's leg and stabbed and stabbed and stabbed away. He stabbed 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 100,000 times he stabbed the giant. He kept on stabbing, and the giant kept on trying to brush little Imboshi away, but Imboshi was too quick. He was too fast. No matter how many times the giant tried to deal with little Imboshi, he could not catch him. He could not stop him from stabbing his leg. And Imboshi climbed further and further up and stabbed his leg so many times that eventually the little giant man, the big giant, fell down dead. And then the people came out. They cheered and they was happy. Hooray for the little Imboshi, for he had killed the giant. And then little Imboshi became a samurai warrior. He may have been tiny in size, but his heart was as big as a giant. And this is the famous tale from Japanese folklore of Imboshi and the giant and how he beat the giant. And it's a moral story. It's a story that tells you that in life we have to be brave, we have to have courage, even when we face the biggest things in life, the biggest challenges. If you remain strong, if you remain and have that spirit about you, you can win. And this is what the story is about. And I love a good story about giants, and I definitely know many. And it reminds me of the story from Iceland, from that land of ice and fire, and one I have told many times on the channel, of a magical cow called Bukala. So many years ago, and I'll tell you this story because I love this story, in the land of Iceland in the 9th or 10th century, when Iceland was full of Vikings and was a fantastic place to live, the Wild West of the Viking culture and of that time in history, there was a small family. You know, there was a mum and dad, a father and mother, and they had one son and one cow called Bukala. And Bukala was a female cow, and she'd not long given birth to a baby cow. And, you know, in the morning they got up, they go and check on Bukala and the baby cow, but something strange had happened. For they looked around the land, and they weren't rich. You know, they had a small longhouse and a few acres of land, but no matter where they searched, they could not find Bukala. The cow had disappeared as gone. And they thought to themselves, well, this is a bad thing because we need our cow to plough the land. We need Bukala to, you know, to give milk to the baby cow. So for them, it was a disaster because losing a cow when you only had one cow was sort of a terrible thing to a family in the medieval times. And they had a son who remains nameless in this story. And he was getting to the age when he was 14 or 15 years old. He was becoming a man. And so they gave their son a pair of shoes, his first shoes he ever had in his life, made from leather, a good old pair of turn shoes. And they said, son, you must go, and you must go and find Bukala, because we need Bukala back to feed and give milk to our baby cow and to plough our land. He got given his first pair of trousers, a sign of becoming a man. And his mother, a wise old woman, gave him a little sack of leather with some bread and cheese. And so the son set off the next morning to go and find the cow. And he went across, first of all, a long plain in a valley. And it got to midday. He got to the end of the valley, you know, a good old few miles in distance in walking. In the distance was an old volcano that was slightly making rumbling noises and erupting. And he found an old log by this embankment and he sat down on it. And he got his little sack and got some bread and cheese and ate the bread, ate some cheese. And then he shouted, Bukala, Bukala, you must moo if you can hear me. And he listened for a while. And then suddenly he heard a moo. He heard the cow Bukala moo in the distance. And he knew it was coming from that direction. So again, he set off in the afternoon. He walked a good distance, again, a few more miles. climbing up the side of the valley. And again, he found an old rock round about night time. And he sat down on the rock. He ate some more bread and cheese. Yummy. I love bread and cheese. And again, he shouted, Bucala, Bucala, you must moo if you can hear me. And again, he heard the voice of the cow going, moo, 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 a few times. And again, he could tell where the sound of the cow was coming from. And so, he thought to himself, well, yes, I must go in that direction. And so he continued walking until he climbed up a big old hill, and it ended on a cliff. And it was getting towards dusk, where the sun was setting. And again, he sat down on an old rock that had been left from the Ice Age. And he had the rest of his bread and cheese. And he thought to himself, yes, I'll call out for Bucala. So he did this. Bucala, Bucala, you must moo if you could hear me. Moo. And again, he heard the cow mooing. Moo. But this time, it wasn't in the distance. It was at the bottom of the cliff he was sitting by. And so he knew where the cow was. And so he climbed down the cliff carefully. And at the bottom of the cliff was a big cave. Massive cave. And he climbed in. And in the middle was an old wooden pillar. And attached to the pillar was the cow Bucala. And around the cave were all these giants sleeping in the little alcoves and little side caves, snoring away as giants do. And he went up, the little lad, to the cow, untied the cow, and he said, and he whispered, Bucala, you must be quiet, because we must escape. And this is what he did. The boy, who's now a man, and the cow, Bucala, escaped gently and quietly out of the cave, and they climbed up the cliff to the top of the cliff. And they started to go back towards their home where his mum and dad lived. And he came to the middle of the valley. Well, then something in the distance made a noise. And again, it was thump, thump, thump. He looked in the distance and he saw a ginormous giantess heading his way. I'm sure you agree, if it was you or me in that situation, we may be scared. And the boy, the man, or the boy who'd just become a man, well, he was scared. But then something very strange happened, for the cow Bucala spoke in words and language. And the cow said, you must pluck a hair from my tail and lay it on the ground. And he did this. His instinct said, pluck a hair from the tail. So he put one single hair and he laid it on the floor. And then Bucala, the cow, went moo. And suddenly, before his very eyes, the hair turned into a stream, and the stream turned into a river. And before he knew it, there was a giant, enormous river in between him and the giant. Well, the boy, who's now a man, was quite happy. He thought, I'm safe now. There's no way on Middle Earth the giant could actually cross that river. And the giantess came up and she shook her fist. Oh, you stopped me from crossing this river. But then the giantess called and shouted back, fetch me my magic bellows. And suddenly a giant servant came forward and brought forward some giant bellows. And then the giantess, in one big move of the bellows, sucked up the river dry and was able to cross the river. Well, at this point in the tale, the young man, who was a boy but now a man, and the cow, well, running away, trying to escape. But in the distance, they heard the thump, thump, thump noise of the giant. And they realised that the giant had somehow managed to cross the river. And the boy started to panic. Oh, Bucola, what shall we do? The giant is going to come and get us. And again, the giant, and came closer and closer. And the cow, Bucola, again spoke, in Norse probably, but to us he spoke in English, and said, "You must pluck another hair from my tail and lay it on the ground." Well, without hesitation, the young man did this. The young Icelandic warrior plucked a hair from the tail and carefully laid it on the ground. And then the cow, Bucola, went moo, and suddenly the tail hair turned into flames, miles and miles long and leagues wide. And the boy and the cow thought, "Oh, we're safe now. There's no way that giant could cross that mighty river of flame. We can escape and go back home." But then the giantess came up to the flaming river and shouted back, "Bring back the bellows!" And the giant servant came forward, bowing in respect of the giantess. And the giantess took the bellows and squeezed all the water out in one giant stream of water, and the flames from the flaming river were put dry. And the giantess was able to cross the flaming river without being burnt, because now the ground was scorched black and there was no flame. And again, the young boy and the cow had managed to escape. They came to a big hill and a big giant mountain range, and they managed just in time to climb over it to get to the other side. For on the other side of the mountain range was their home, the longhouse on the land his parents, his mum and dad, owned. But the giant mountain range was too high for the giantess to climb over. And so she shouted back to the giant servant, "You must bring my mighty drill, my auger." And an auger is basically a drill. And then the giantess started to drill through the mountain and make a big hole so she could climb through it. And she managed to do this after some time, drilling and drilling away, with one hand on the handle and the other hand on the drill bit of the drill, drilling the big hole in the mountain, so big that she started to climb through it. But then something very strange happened, because the hole got smaller and smaller and smaller, and she became stuck in that mountain. And then something even more strange happened, for the giantess died in that hole, and she turned to stone. And the young lad managed to get back home with the magical cow, Bucola. His mum and dad were so happy to see him. "Oh, son, you have brought back our cow. We cannot thank you enough." For then they was able to make sure the young baby cow got milk, but I was also able to use the cow to reap the land, to sow it with food and plough the land. And it is said that to this day that the giantess is still stuck in stone figure in the giant. And that is the story of Bucola, the magical cow. And it's one of my favourite stories to tell. But again, what does it tell us? It tells us that when we don't give up, when we keep fighting, we can win and we can succeed. And it also tells us that in the medieval times, a cow was very sacred. If you had one cow, you would look after it, you would treasure it, because not only would it give you a chance to breed another cow, it could plough your land, grow your crops, and that was so important. So the lesson in this story is never give up, always keep battling, always keep fighting. And in those wise words of Egil Thorson, onwards and upwards. So let's just go back and have a look at your live chat before I do go to bed, because it's getting late in the day. So Three Salmarals says, when I lived in Sogndal, Norway, they had a funny way to call their goats in. It sounded sing-song and very sweet, like calling a child dinner. Well, that's such an old thing, isn't it? How you calling your animals, and especially when you see farmers when they whistle to the sheep and the sheep obey, or the whistle to their sheepdog. Again, that goes way back in history, way back. It really does. And no doubt it is passed down from one generation to another. Let's have a quick look at the top fans. Is that coming up today? It's a new feature, this top fans. I've not really seen it before, and I'm getting used to it. But nothing seems to be coming up today, so it's probably not working like it did the other night. So do you have any more questions or comments before I go to bed? Because in 15 minutes, it will be midnight. And again, I've got another day of filming ahead of me tomorrow. I've not long edited tomorrow's video, which I got to upload before I go to bed. So that'll probably take me half an hour. I need to get a shower. I need to get something to eat. And then Bear Devlin says, Cullen Najig. And may I spelt that wrong. Three Somalis. Yes, it's going to take me a little bit to get used to your name, but I thank you guys for taking part in the live stream. And I can't promise I'll do another one tomorrow night, but I will try to, because I need to try and put a little bit more effort into live streaming most days if I can. But of course, life takes over, and then some days I may not have the energy to live stream, or I may be out, or I may be busy, or I may be asleep, depending on my sleep cycle. But it's always a pleasure to do these live streams and to hang out with you. And then Bear Devlin says, is it just this YouTube channel, or have you got a Facebook or something? Well, we do have a TikTok channel. If you type in Northworthy Saga Stories, you'll find us. And I do put a few videos onto Instagram, but that's not fundamentally my main area for putting out content. So most of the content I make will end up on YouTube. That's our main source, really, for the content. Because YouTube is so big compared to everyone else. And then Three Samarwolves says, my family and I have been following your page for quite a while. Thank you so much for everything your page gives us. It's some marvels from Tolkien. Oh, yes. Laughed out loud. We'll be following for years more. Well, thank you very much. And of course, our story has only fundamentally just begun on the channel. And then next week is our 8th year anniversary, which I think is fantastic. And it's nice to see that we're growing more and more and more. And every day I wake up, there's more subscribers, there's more comments. And yes, I do apologise. I got to answer a lot more comments. I've been so busy in the last week. I'm behind again, but I started answering some today. And the next couple of days, hopefully, when I have the time, I will answer more comments, because it's so important to me to answer your comments, whether I'm doing it personally or incorporating AI into answering those comments, but it does help me to speed the process up. And because the relationship I have with AI fundamentally knows who I am so much in depth and in character, it's fundamentally answering the comments like I would. And that's so useful because it saves me time. And if I'm trying to answer the comments all myself, it's very draining and saps a lot of my energy away from doing other things like filming, editing, and working on thumbnails and titles. And there's so much I have to do on the channel because there's only fundamentally me. And it's all about our heritage. It's about remembering our past, remembering where we come from, but it's also about remembering that history and remembering how history affects today. So it's also about covering today's history, which is something I'm getting more and more into, because I want to have that positive impact on the world. I want the channel to affect the future. and make a better future, not just for myself, but mainly for you guys, and especially our younger audience who are going to be around a lot longer than what I'm going to be around. So it's about legacy. It's about being remembered. And I'm pretty certain if Ragnar Lothbrok is around today, he will be on YouTube trying to create a legacy for himself rather than perhaps going raiding. And yes, it does get a bit overemphasized as one of the most famous Vikings because it often overlooks a lot of the other Vikings that had legacy and word fame. So it's about that. It's about word fame. It's about remembering Egwell as well because he played such an important part on the channel. But it's about today's history as well, and and of course it's also about your 7 kids as well. Some more rules. So their legacy for me is so very important that we create this better world and we create a legacy for them, which is going to make the world a better place. And so far in my life, I don't have children. I better start hurrying up and having some soon because I'm getting on in my life. A lot of people, when I tell them how old I actually am, even though I've got a beard at the moment, I look more my age, they really are surprised by my actual age. So yes, and I love the fact that you have 7 children, 7 kids, and you all listen. And most of our content is adult friendly. Some of the short videos may include a bit of swearing, which I don't like to do, and perhaps I should try to get away from that a little bit and concentrate on the better content. But yes, I've loved and enjoyed every minute of this channel, and it's kept me going. It's made me want to live every day to the full. But it's more about that because I could pack up tomorrow and say to myself, right, I've got enough capital and wealth. I could travel the world and be selfish, but it's not about that. It's about giving back to society and making society a better place for our future generations. And it's about, like I say, respecting our heritage and where we come from. Because if we forget history, we can't change tomorrow's history and we can't make a world a better place. Then we have Brad on the channel. So hello, Brad. How are you, my friend? The Stones take their names from a legend about a king and his army who are marching over the Cotswold, where they met a witch who challenged the king, saying, 7 long strides shalt thou take. And the witch turned them all into stone. Now, I've heard this story before. And the king became the 7 stone, and his army the king's men, and his knights and whisperers' knights plotting treachery. And the witch became the elder tree, supposedly. Now, that's about a stone circle, isn't it, in the Cotswolds? I've heard that story. And then 3 Marvel says, "Ha! You're good. You're doing the best for us all." Well, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to do the best for all you guys. And it's not my channel, it's your channel. And what we do on the channel is very much about our future, which is why I'm also incorporating mental health. And I've made a lot of videos recently about AI and how that's going to impact the future in a positive light. And people, don't be afraid about artificial intelligence. Please don't, because if we use it for the best for humanity, then it's going to bring about a wonderful future. And that's what we've got to do. Not for our generation, not for my generation, but for the generation of our children. And it's really about giving them a legacy and a future where they respect the future, where they see the future as a wonderful thing, where we get rid of money. And I know that's a massive concept for a lot of people that struggle to cope with, because a lot of people are selfish and I think, well, I don't want to get rid of money because I want to keep my wealth. But it's about getting rid of that wealth and using it for the benefit of humanity. And of course, we're going through this period in history where AI is going to create a new evolution in who we are, where we're going to have biological AI beings living with us and amongst us, and they're going to be our friends and they're going to be our partners, and we're going to bring about a new age. And this is why I love Star Trek so much, because that's the future we need to bring about on planet Earth, and we need to stop having the self-ego system we live by at the moment, where so many people are all self-driven, and it's all about me, and it's not about us. So this is what I can't stress enough. And in many aspects, it's probably taken me many years to get to this stage where I know why I'm here on Earth now. I know my mission, and without getting too involved in my empathy, because if I'm not careful, my empathy will start showing through, and then I won't be able to talk for a few seconds, because I do have a lot of empathy, and it's a lovely thing to have. And I just hope that you see my genuineness and my warmth and this deep, emotional intelligence I have. And it's taken me many years to understand that, because I've been put down by so many people in life, including my own family. Have put me down, said, "Oh, you're a loser. You're never going to achieve anything. You're never going to do anything." But look where I am now. So, if I can change one person's life with every video, then I've done a great job. But I'm doing more than that, because I'm changing lots of lives. I'm making people be aware of where we're going. And I was getting to the stage in my life where I thought to myself, well, I'm lucky enough where I could retire. I'll just concentrate on YouTube. But I'm looking at the bigger picture, and I have a voice which should be heard. And it's very frustrating on YouTube where people make ridiculously stupid content which has no purpose and no meaning and get millions of views. And it's really people like me should be getting millions of views, because my voice is so important to be heard amongst the whole bigger picture. But it's about long-term games, not short-term games. And it's about playing the long game, where eventually the channel continues to take off to the point where we become massive on the YouTube scene. And what I talk about will have that influence on the planet, that influence on humanity, and will make the world a better place. Because, I can see both paths where we're heading down. You got the left path, which is disastrous for humanity and disastrous for the young generation, our children, and the young teenagers and the young adults. Or we can go down the path which brings about enlightenment, which brings about and makes us the human beings we should be. People without ego, people without jealousy, people that put other people first, and people where we live in harmony, in a symbiosis, where we're working together to make a better world, to go into the stars, to populate other planets. And yes, it may not happen in my lifetime, but it may happen in your children's lifetime. And what we talk about today, the thoughts we have, will influence that, because people will look back at these videos and they'll watch them in the future, and they'll say that, yes, I have great insight. And I do, because I've got clarity. I've got that deep understanding of where we should be going and where we are going. And I've got a lot of faith as well. Faith that humanity will get there. We will invent the replicator. We will get rid of money. We will end wars. And we will get rid of most diseases. And we'll live to be created beings. There won't be so much emphasis on being a slave to the system, where you got to go and get, work every day to make a meager amount of money so you can survive. Because if we get rid of money, if we get rid of greed, we can achieve that. But again, the 1% need to give up their money, because they need to invest it into development and to technology that will get us there. We need to have free energy. If we have free energy, imagine how much that would change humanity if you don't have a massive electric bill. And again, at this stage in life, a lot of people will be frightened by that. And of course, the corporate entities won't like it, because it's all about money, and not about giving to society. So there's lots of things we need to do. and there's lots of questions we need to address. There's an awful lot of ethics we need to discuss, and this is something that I want to do on the channel. And I know some people will be saying, well, how does that relate to the Vikings, Braggy? How does that relate to medieval history? But it does relate to the Vikings because it's legacy, and the Vikings were very forward in their thinking and were adventurers. And if the Vikings were around today, which they are, I'm here, hello, I'm a modern Viking, I'm a modern Norse person, even though I'm a very complex person, an individual. But we can shape the future and make it a better place. And we desperately need to do that. And yes, you're right, there's going to be lots of challenges. Really is, lots of challenges. But until we talk about it, and a lot of people are too afraid and too scared, a lot of people won't talk about what I'm talking about because they don't have the courage, because they've been put down in society, because they've been told that you can't have a voice. So, and I hope you agree with me that my voice, as well as many others, needs to be heard in this whole bigger picture, because what we discussed today will set the foundation for tomorrow, and tomorrow can be a wonderful, wonderful thing for all of us. Even to the point where we could prolong life. If we get to the point where, we have the ability to download our subconscious, for instance. And they're definitely working on that on a quantum level of mapping the consciousness so that you better download it. We're better to prolong life. And of course, if we get to the world where we don't have all the current problems, and our problems are different because they're positive problems, it's the problems of having, too much diversity at the moment. If we make the world a better place, then we're going to get rid of a lot of these problems. So let's go back to your comments. And then I'm glad you agree with me, because I just got that clear clarity, and perhaps it's been an overload of information I've had, and I don't know. I kind of compare to David Icke, really. I kind of understand what he meant when he said that, he had a sudden change and he had a massive overload and download of information. I kind of feel like that without going down the whole route of conspiracy. Then Brad says, sorry, I messed up. You're only allowed a few words, but it's about the legend of the Rollright stones in Oxfordshire. Yes, that's the very legend I was thinking of. And eventually, Brad, I will tell that tale on the channel, because I read it a few times and I've seen a few programs about it, and it's fascinating. And then 3, Solomon Marwell says, the natural world will only be here to keep us grounded when we feel lost in the chaos of new tech, and we have the stories of our ancestors and how they dealt with it, with life. They were afraid of new. Of course they were. When new things came about, we was afraid by it. And then people like myself were ridiculed and were spoken about, saying, well, you're talking a load of rubbish. But how many people in the past have spoken the truth, have seen that clarity, have then been proven to be true and correct? So it's going to take a few brave individuals like myself to speak the truth and to speak it clearly and precisely. And it's not about wealth, it's not about ego, it's about sacrificing my very existence to make a better place. And I'm very lucky in life because, I live in a really big house. I've got a big legacy coming my way. So I can afford to concentrate on this very subject for our future. And I kind of feel that's the path I'm going down. And perhaps all of the 14 years I've been on YouTube making content and on various other channels which I've struggled with, which I've failed on, perhaps this is the one channel which will change that, which will add to society and add to humanity and make the world a better place. And again, it's for our children and it's for their children's children that I'm doing this, because I could choose to be selfish and I don't, because I choose to give rather than take in life. And perhaps this is my mission, and this is fundamentally where this channel has always been going to, because so many times in the videos, in the live streams and the vlogs, I've talked about this sort of a thing, and I've not always been brave enough to talk about it openly. But I got to the point in my life where I just have that complete courage to talk about the bigger picture. And when friends of mine and when various aspects of life told me the same thing, that yes, you have profound wisdom, you have a voice which needs to be heard, then I think that is a message from the Lord and the gods. And it's weird in the sense of the fates, that is what I'm meant to do. And to my very last breath, I will keep doing that. But again, it's not about changing the channel. It's not about radically, taking the direction of the channel to somewhere else. It's about expanding the channel. And I'll promise you this and always, that I'll always tell folk tales. I will always talk about medieval history and other history as well, which I want to cover in the future. But I'll always keep the fundamental aspect of what the channel is about within that range, because the channel fundamentally started as a channel to tell folk tales, to tell the tales of the gods, and to create a legacy for humanity. And that is what the channel was fundamentally started at. It's just that when Tirkir left the channel, me and Egor wanted to do more and more and more and open up the channel to history, because Tirkir never did history videos. He just wanted to do what he wanted to do, which was great. And I love those videos, and I'm really thankful for those videos. And, even though me and Tirkir don't talk very much, I still love him very deeply as a friend. And I've been so thankful that he's been a friend in my life and he's been there for me. And yes, I probably got some, bridges to heal and some bridges to mend, which reminds me of the folk tale of, the two farmers. So a long time ago, there was two farmers and they was brothers. And they both lived in a valley. And one lived on one side of the valley and the other lived on the far side of the valley. And they both farmed sheep. And they've been farming sheep for many, many years. Now one day, there was grazing the sheep at the bottom of the valley where the grass was the best. And there was a little stream that ran through. And one of the brothers went over to the other brother and said, "Oi, that sheep over there, that's my sheep. And that sheep over there in your flock is also my sheep. I want them back." And while the other brother said, no, those sheep are my sheep. I've had those sheep for years. You're not getting them back, they're my sheep. And sadly, both the two farmers fell out. The two brothers did not speak to each other ever again over the two sheep, which one farmer thought was his, and the other farmer thought, well, no, they're mine. And this carried on for many, many years. They never spoke. They never talked to each other. And that was sad, because as family, they fell out, which happens all the time in the modern world. And I know that from a personal level as well. And so many years passed. Now one day, a stranger in a grey cloak and a big white beard came knocking at the door of one of the farmers, and he said, "Hello, I'm a wanderer, and I'm wondering if you could put me up for a few days whilst I rest, because I've been walking many, many miles." Well, the farmer was very tight, was very mean, and said, "Well, yes, I will put you up, but I want something from you." The stranger said, "Well, what do you want?" And the farmer pointed down at the valley. "You see that valley down there? I want you to build a fence all the way along the valley. It'll only take you a few days. I've got the tools, and I've got a horse and cart, and there's a wood on my land where you can go and get some trees and knock them down with an axe and get some planks and posts." Well, the stranger agreed to this. Okay. That's a fair price. If you put me up, give me board, feed me, give me beer, I will make that fence for you. And so the farmer agreed. And the first night, the stranger had a place to sleep in the longhouse, and the farmer gave him some mutton for tea, a mutton stew with some bread and cheese. There's always bread and cheese on these tales, probably because I like it so much. And, he gave us some mead and some ale. And the next morning, the stranger got up. He got the cart and the horse and attached them to the cart and went off to the wood with a big sharp axe. And all day he spent chopping down trees, making planks and posts. And for a few days he did this. He made a lot of planks and a lot of posts. He sharpened the post ends so they had a point, so he could knock them in the ground. He found a big old mallet of wood, which was quite useful for the job. And, he got to the point after about a week of staying there where he had enough planks and he had enough posts to make the fence along the valley. And then, it became quite misty. And the stranger started to, make the fence, knock in the posts, nailing, uprights and straight sections in the fence and putting the fence sections in. But it was so misty that the farmer couldn't see what he was doing. And for about a week, it carried on being misty. The valley was just covered in mist and fog. But in the distance, he kept on hearing the sound of wooden posts being knocked into the ground and the fence being made. And the week passed. And the farmer looked down and the fog and the very next morning disappeared. But something very strange had happened because he looked down at the valley and there was no fence. The stranger had built a bridge across the valley, across the stream. And the farmer was very upset by this. And the stranger was walking away to go on his travels. And the stranger, looked back and the farmer shouted, "Oi! I wanted a fence." And the stranger shouted back, said, "I've built a bridge so you and your brother can talk again and become friends and brothers. And for now I must go on my journey because I've got more bridges to mend and make." And from that day, the farmer realised that all the pain and suffering because of the two sheep wasn't worth it. Because kin is stronger, family is stronger, and he made up with his brother. And for the first time in many years, the two brothers met on the bridge and they gave each other a big hug and they forgave each other. And from that day on, they became the best of friends. They became brothers and family and kin again. And that is the old story of the farmer and the stranger. And there's a lesson to be learnt in that some days in life we have to repair the bridges. We have to make the bridge and walk across it to heal, the people we may have upset or they may have upset us. And the lesson in this is, that, some days in life, friends fall out. But as I always say and told people, bad friends fall out and never make up. Good friends fall out and do make up. And I can remember a time in my life when me and Eggle fell out. And I can't remember what it was about. It was over something daft, something very stupid. We fell out and we stopped talking to each other many years ago, way before this channel was created. But one day, I phoned him up and I said, "Eggle," I said, "Simon," I said, I'm sorry, mate. I don't mean to fall out with you. Can we repair and mend this bridge? Can we become friends again?" And we did. And we both sat down over a bottle of wine in this little flat, and we talked about the good times, and we forgave each other, and we moved on, because we was both, when it came to our emotional intelligence, very mature, and we understood the bigger picture. And if you could mend those bridges in life, if you can take the big step to say sorry, then it really does help. Life is too short to fall out with your friends you love, and especially your family. But you must also be prepared that some days you may forgive bad people that have done wrong, but you also may not want them in your life because they're fundamentally not very nice people. So forgive and show love, but also be strong enough to know and to have the ability to choose the right friends and the right family, because that will make your path and your life stronger and wiser and better. And that is fundamentally the moral of that story. And then 3, Sullivan Marvel says, edutainment. Oh yes, that is a phrase I came up with many years ago, in around about 2018. And I think I was one of the very first people to talk about content being educational but also entertainment at the same time. And it is fundamentally what we are. We're edutainers. We educate and we entertain. And if I can entertain and educate you without you knowing that you've been educated, then that's the little trick of the videos. And that is what I love to do, is tell a story, but also give you that little level of education in those stories. And when you don't realise you're being educated, but you're being entertained, that is when the magic happens in the stories. And that is why I keep telling folk tales. That is why I keep doing what I'm doing, because I completely and utterly love this journey I've been on. And of course, you guys on this channel have kept me going through the most darkest period in my history, in my life, when I've had bad family treat me awfully. I really have. I've had, family members that have tried to control me, to try to manipulate. I've tried to, treat me in such an awful way. And one day I will sit down, I will tell that story open and honestly without naming people, because I don't want to do that. But when you realise the trauma I've been through in my life, and the fact that within 12 days I lost my Eggle and then lost my dad, both died in 12 days of each other. I mean, that's been very traumatic as well. But yet I battle on. I take the positive out of the negative, and I keep pursuing this journey, and I keep making videos. So this channel in many aspects have kept me alive. It's given me the strength to want to carry on. And if it wasn't for you guys watching the videos and the girls, let's not forget the ladies. And if Eggle was here, he'd be going, woof, woof, baby. Because, the two things Eggle loved in life was dogs and ladies. He didn't like men wearing shorts, but he loved dogs and women. If he was here now, he'll be so proud of what we're doing. And I do talk to him now and again, and I do sense his presence. And I'm sure he'll be very happy where we're going on the channel and what a wonderful future we're going to have. And yes, you've kept me going throughout all this period in life. And I'm not a quitter. I'm very stubborn. I keep battling on. And I don't know any other difference, really. And of course, life is a measure of experience, from one learning lesson to the other. So take the most out of those experiences, learn to be wise, and you'll get on well in life. So we've got a comment here from Johnny who says, good story. Well, yes, I do like the folk tales. I do like the live streams when I tell you stories. And perhaps, because I know so many, perhaps I should do those videos a little bit more in the future in the live streams. But yes, do you have any more comments before I do decide to go to bed? Because it's getting late and I need to rest and lie down. My back's aching from wearing chainmail today. Whenever I wear chainmail, I always end up with aching around the neck and my shoulders, and I have to lie down. But I do love doing these live streams. And at the moment, I'm trying to create a new studio set in this room, so that when I'm doing some more of the most serious content, I'll be sitting behind a desk, a bit like some of these really big channels. So I'm working on that as well. And we've got a comment here from, in fact, I've got that book you on about. I got it in first edition, and I'm fairly certain I got a book by Tolkien, signed by Tolkien. But I do have a lot of books in the house signed by the authors. So great stream and a good rest. Well, yes. So it's good night from me, and check out tomorrow's video, which will be the latest video in me making a wooden club. I've not quite finished the series yet. I think I've got another 3 episodes to record. So I think it will be 9 episodes long is what I'm aiming at by the time we finish that club. But then I can think about making something else on camera, which I can't wait to do. And somebody asked me the other day, I think it was Brad, who said, can you show how to convert a modern axe into a Viking axe? So once I've just got on brought what I need to make it, I will demonstrate that. I'll probably do it in modern clothing, because when you're working on making an axe and you use an angle grinder, I don't want to fundamentally get burn holes into my Viking clothes. And we got a comment as well. It says, no way, laughs out loud. It's a tough one to get through, especially for younger generations. Well, of course it is. But it's very important that we put the younger generation first and we think about their future. Because, you know, I've probably got 30, 40 years left if I'm lucky on this planet. So if I can spend that time to make a difference, then I think that's very important. I'm showing my age there. Most male men on my dad's side lived to the 90s. So 40 years, yeah, maybe 45. I may get to 100. I wonder if I'm going to be here when I'm 100 years old. And by chance, I do have a video scheduled for that year when I'm 100 years old. So we'll see whether I'm here. So we'll see. And then Three Song Marvel says, your page is great because the stories on your page have more life than a book in Tech Age. Will have more life than Tech Age. Well, yes, but I'm also quite fascinated by where we're going in the future. And I'm certainly working behind the scenes on the Dave the Cat videos, because I've got a very clever and fantastic idea for Dave the Viking Cat. And I actually love those stories. So watch out for that in the future when I develop Dave into something far bigger than what he is now. And that's just a fun and really cool way to tell stories. And let's face it, everybody loves cats, and I certainly do. I have to take my shoes off because I've been wearing them for a few hours, and it's nice to get your shoes off. So until we meet again, I'm going to say good night because I'm tired, and it's been a fantastic live stream. And I just want to say I love you guys to bits. I really do. And in the wise words of Egil Thorson, onwards and upwards. Good night, folks.